days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a little bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. That's right, welcome to the horror show, and thank you so very much once again for joining me here for, yes, the twice-a-week spotlight that I do on my favorite author of all time, as you can see by all the books beside me. But a new thing that I started doing this year was a new spotlight series entitled Films That Forgot the Face of Their Father. And so this was essentially me going and reviewing movies that were basically sequels to King stuff that he had nothing to do with. So I started out with Return to Salem's Lot, then I jumped into none other than Pet Sematary 2, and unfortunately two different sometimes they come back sequels at this point. Now, you may notice I haven't touched any of the Children of the Corns as of yet, and that's because I had already reviewed number 2 and number 3 with Marsha Parker and Cecil Laird, and so I'm not gonna, trudge through the rest of that series, which is actually Stephen King's most sequelized without the two of them. But now we're getting to another feature theatrical release in comparison with, I don't think either of those Sometimes They Come Backs were released theatrically. They were both like the direct-to-video, and boy, that third one was absolute dog turds, man. It was so bad. I actually quite liked the second one, and ironically, I also kind of liked Pet Sematary 2, and I liked Return to Salem's Lot a whole lot more than I remembered enjoying it, despite the fact that, it kind of bastardizes the mythology a little bit. But at this point, I'm really wondering about changing the title of this series, because after honestly, I like this movie that I'm about to talk about. I'd never seen it before. We are talking The Rage, Carrie 2 from 1999, and this is so funny because this is basically like, it should really be called American Carrie or, Carrie Pie or something silly like that, because, I mean, it came out the same year as American Pie, and it feels so late 90s, early 2000s, high school, just kind of, I mean, you could point the comparisons to everything from, the aforementioned Pie flick, he's the Pie Fire, to, like a Varsity Blues, which, because this is also about football players and stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of similarities, and you've got two different people from American Pie in this. You've got Finch from American Pie in it. You've got Minu Suvari, who was, in American Pie, and then also was in American Beauty, playing a high school student about the same time. But, yeah, I must admit, so the original Carrie was supposed to take place in 1979, even though the book was released in 74, and the film that Brian De Palma did came out in 76. But, I did a rewatch of the original Carrie last night before watching The Rage, just because I heard that Sue Snell, the same actress who plays the surviving girl who tried to set up, Sissy Spacek's Carrie with her boyfriend Tommy and stuff. And so, I mean, I was like, okay, they have some sense of continuity and whatnot, because in these sequels, they always have to have, like, either some story thread or some returning, character or whatever, or, references in some cases with some of these Stevie K, kind of continuing the story without his blessing and stuff like that. But I have to say, once again, I was entertained by this movie. And with rewatching Carrie, the original Carrie feels very dated to me. It really, really does. With the exception of when things really get going in the last 20 minutes of Carrie, with spoilers, where she basically burns down the entire gym and, kills all those kids and some teachers too, including the gym teacher who was like nice to her and stuff. So yeah, she goes into full-on crazy telepathic bitch mode, and, it's, I don't know. It's a film that just, for me, it's not one of my favorite Stephen King stories either, I'll admit. Carrie is probably not even in my top 20, but it was the novel that basically catapulted King's career into the stratosphere and got the gears turning once that feature film came out. So The Rage Carrie 2 comes out in 1999, 20 years after the original Carrie story was presumably going down. And so here on the horror show, we always talk about general impressions, we talk about story, we talk about acting, we talk about, technical stuff like effects and practical and whatnot, and then a little bit of music. And so overall impressions, I was in high school when this movie came out, and it's a movie about high school, and god damn does it feel so much like just stepping back into a time warp for me, you know, from just, so this, Rachel is the name of the character, and she is apparently the half-sister of Carrie, but like the 20 years younger, I don't really get it, but apparently the same father who fathered Carrie, you know, with the insane, you know, super religious mother and stuff, well, he went and sowed his seeds elsewhere, presumably, and it just kind of makes you wonder, did he really wait 20 years to go knock somebody else up, or is there possibly another half-sibling around there somewhere in the 20 years in between? Obviously, we don't really have any answers about that, but we do know that this girl was left to her mother, and her mother was, you know, just kind of on the psychotic side as well, and the movie opens up with her, you know, with this Rachel girl as a youngster, and you can tell she has some of the same powers, you know, as far as like slamming windows and doors, and, you know, just the whole telekinetic thing, you know, just like Carrie had. And so, yeah, Rachel ends up, you know, in a foster home, and she's like super goth, which is so, she's got like the industrial, you know, like the black hair and, you know, all the rings and the, you know, the black fingernail paint, and I loved girls like this back in high school, and I still do, damn it. But yeah, she's got like the Manson poster and the Nine Inch Nails poster in her room, and I still love those bands. But so this film is so much of its era, but for me that's actually okay. And so overall impressions, well, it does follow the original Carrie formula, you know, of you know, just like a very, like, something big happens at one point, and then it's just a very slow burn until the fiery finish and stuff. And so I must say, I thought acting was actually pretty good in this story, while a lot of rehashes actually had some endearing moments to it, and the big payoff in the finale scene is actually very well orchestrated and very cool. So once again, like I said, I feel like I need to change the title of this series with just, yeah, the fact that I've enjoyed all except for sometimes they come back for more. I've actually had fun with all of the other films that I've reviewed in this series, you know, Return of Sam's Lot and Pet Sematary 2, and, you know, sometimes they come back again. And this, I think this might be the most entertaining of all of them for me, though, but that's just because I like stuff of this era, because it's when I was an adolescent. And so, you know, once again, the story basically goes that, you know, and this script was based on some real-life shizzle, where there were these high school football players who basically had some scoring system for all the tail that they were getting, and based on how they rated the caliber of the chick's hotness, you know, they were giving themselves point systems. And so, yeah, they're going around and, you know, de-virginizing and sleeping with cheerleaders and all kinds of other girls and breaking girls' hearts, and a really... a girl kind of just takes things into her own hands after having her heart broken, and it happens in the first like 10 minutes of the movie, so I just gotta get it out there. But she commits suicide, and so that basically like sets events into motion for just some of the sordid nature of these football players, and, you know, a couple of the cheerleaders and friends and stuff who are essentially playing the same type of spin as the popular kids did in the original De Palma film. And so yeah, Rachel ends up she finds the interest of one of these football players, who is played by none other than Randall Pink Floyd himself. That's right, not the London brother who was in Mallrats. We're talking the other London brother, because these two dudes look like identical to me. We're talking Jason, not Jeremy London, and this is the one who was in like The Man in the Moon, but everybody remembers him from Dazed and Confused, myself included, which is one of my favorite films of all time. I must say, though, it's pretty funny to see him still playing a high school student 6 years later, at the age of 27. Anyway, I digress. So, yeah, it essentially turns into him and Rachel, they basically fall in love, and the jealousy of one of the cheerleaders that he spurns from the, you know, like, near the beginning of the film, yeah, it turns into, you know, this big plot and everything. So once again, a lot of the same beats as the original De Palma film and the original novel and whatnot. But I actually thought that story-wise, you know, it was kind of endearing, their little love story here. It kind of warmed my heart a little bit, and it wasn't, I mean, all the performances, as I segue into this, they're pretty good, you know? I mean, I've seen some hammy 90s crap, and this was not of that ilk, honestly. I thought London and the actress who plays Rachel, they had some genuine chemistry, and you've got like a who's who of all kinds of other people, like I mentioned, you know, Finch from, American Pie, Mimi Savari. Funny thing, you've got the oldest brother from Home Improvement in this, once again, the returning actress Sue Snell in it. You've got Cher from the Clueless TV series in this also, and she was in Road Trip. She was the most beautiful girl in the room, in the whole wide room. Yeah, she was on Concords as well, and yet, one thing that I must say I didn't really like that they did in this was they had full-on flashbacks to the original Carrie movie. And they did it quite a bit in this too, so that is actually one thing that didn't work for me. But I mean, aside from that, all the performances were actually pretty good. The bad clique were villainous without being like too super cheese. I mean, I can't believe I'm praising this movie as much as I am, but I actually really enjoyed it. So if we're gonna jump into just how it was shot and effects and things of that nature, you've got this chick Kat Shea. And she was actually a protege of Roger Corman, who started out as an actress and then segued into writing and doing these low-budget things for Corman. She was making movies for like $500,000 that would turn over profits of $5 to $10 million. So Corman was like, yeah, you're awesome. And then New Line Cinema ends up snatching her up to do the Poison Ivy film, the first in the series. Now, I always think of the one with Jaime Pressly because, you see her super hotness in that. But yeah, the original with Drew Barrymore is a very effective femme fatale thriller, and it's actually pretty well directed also. It's one of those like erotic thrillers that was so popular in the 80s and 90s that we honestly, stupid garbage like the Shades of Grey shit, that's what is trying to masquerade as films like this. But I really don't think we get movies like Poison Ivy, much like we did in the 80s and 90s. And so, I mean, decently adept director, and she does a very nice job. It's cinematic. I mean, the scene where the girl commits suicide is very well played and, very strikingly shot, where she just the slow-mo fall off the top, and there's some very cool like twisty shots where Rachel as both a kid and then later when we see her growing up in high school and stuff, there's like some twisting spirally camera type stuff. It's actually, and even the party scene at the end, it's all very well lit, very well shot, and it's a good looking movie, I have to say. You can tell that there was some talent behind the camera here, and also the effects, while it's very similar, like I said, to the original Carrie, where there's really nothing as far as gore and scares and even much of a horror movie until about the last 20 minutes or so. But I must say, whereas the original Carrie, Carrie's covered in pig blood, so I don't know, that's about the extent of like the gore and stuff, but there is some good practical gore in this final scene where she's just killing everybody and putting like spears through people or like flagpoles, all kinds of stuff. She starts shooting CDs and they're like notching people in the neck, and there's actually there's one scene in particular that I'm trying to remember. It involves a harpoon or a spear gun, I should say. Why there's harpoon/spear guns at this super rich kid's house who was on like the NCIS and some other stuff. He's a real douche, but for whatever reason, there's harpoon guns here, and really wish I could tell you guys who it is that gets it, because it is top notch and so good. There's one weird thing they do with her, like since she doesn't get like covered in blood, she gets these weird like black vein things like going like on her arms and her face and stuff. It feels very like industrial gothy late 90s early 2000s of the era, like they wanted to show like the black bloods, veiny stuff going on within her. But yeah, it works for me. It actually looks pretty cool, I must say, and where you see like her tattoo pulsating and everything. As far as music goes, yeah, it's also very of the era in the fact that now I don't think they're actually featured in the movie, or if they were, I just didn't recognize. But I mean, on the soundtrack, for instance, because the late 90s, early 2000s, you've got the soundtracks with it had like Typo Negative and Paradise Lost and Fear Factory, and so yeah, gothy, industrially kind of thing. There is a remix of They're All Gonna Laugh at You, which is set to music, which made me laugh because it was just that bad. But Yeah, as a whole, I mean, it's, once again, it's very of the era. You know, even at one point in time where, you know, the clique of people is effing with Carrie, they call her on the phone and they basically say, "What's your favorite scary movie? What's your favorite scary movie?" And they're doing like a Donald Duck voice or some shizzle. It's kind of silly. But, and then there's also funny lines like, you know, "You're caviar and she's cheese whiz," you know, so there is some cheese in this movie, but you know what, it was the right kind of cheese for me as, you know, somebody in my 30s now who grew up at this time. And you know, it always helps when you go in with donuts for expectations in circumstances like this, because you know what, guys, I had a lot of fun with this movie, and in some ways, dare I say, perhaps this wasn't a film that forgot the face of its father. I'm sure Stephen King hated it if he ever even watched it. Probably didn't. It really makes me wonder if King has actually seen some of these films, like Return to Salem's Lot, or, you know, Carrie 2, or whatever. I'm sure he watches the remakes, you know, like, they did 2 Carrie remakes, actually. Jeez, there was the one that they did for TV, which was supposed to be like a backdoor pilot for a full series, and then there was also, it was the one with Chloe Grace Moretz, or whatever, that I wasn't so much a fan of that. But honestly, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of Carrie as a story, honestly. Personally, for me, I like the book the best, because the book is all about, like, you know, the journal entries and the newspaper clippings and all those different things. It's told in a very, very interesting fashion. But long story short, The Rage, Carrie 2, they even have their own, like, cheesy, metally kind of "give me the rage" at the end, which made me laugh. You know, it's about on par as far as the cheese whiz factor goes of "deepest, bluest, my head is like shark fin." It's like, yes, anything that has the title of the film in the theme song, oh boy. But nonetheless, I actually like The Rage, Carrie 2 for this being my first time watching it. So, yeah, this is another along with the 2 Sometimes They Come Back films that I had not watched before. I had seen Return to Salem's Lot before, and I had seen Pet Sematary 2 before, but I'd never watched The Rage, Carrie 2. And you know what? I liked it. I honestly did. It's not like Shakespearean, you know, tragedy Romeo and Juliet, although they do talk about it at one point in time in this movie, you know. But yeah, it's not Shakespearean theater, but it's still a fun movie that I must say I enjoyed the hell out of. So I gotta extend a grande gracias to all you Hail to Stephen King constant viewers that are checking out this video. I have been Jaime and Fuego, and you can find me on all social media sectors: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, just like you're seeing it spelled below. And if you haven't liked and shared and subscribed and, you know, doing all the horror show stuff that we appreciate so very much, we have to extend a big, big thanks, a grande gracias, as I always say, for all of us who helped us get past the 20,000 subscriber plateau just this past week. We are humbled and we are honored that all of you have been along on this ride with us. And the Hail to Stephen King audience, I think, has been heavily instrumental in just, you know, things continuing to climb. Must remind you once again that at the end of the month, on May 26th, I am going to be doing a series of panels. On the 26th and the 27th, we're doing a Stephen King's It panel. We are doing a panel about The Stand for its anniversary here, and we are also doing a Pet Sematary anniversary, which I just got done reading, as you can see by the book up there. And we're actually going to be live streaming the Pet Sematary panel at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on The Horror Show. So stay tuned for that here in just about a week and a half. And yes, I extend that big ass gracias once more to all of you. And make sure to ring that bell so you get notifications about all the videos we do here 2, sometimes 3 times a day. And until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, sin amigos, constant readers. I am hopeful that we meet again sooner rather than later. And until then, remember, stay scared. And as much as I recommend this movie, seriously, read Stephen King. Carrie's pretty damn good, I gotta say, for a first attempt at least.